What's up guys? Today's Quick Tip Tuesday is how to get cinematic motion blur. Here's how you do it. So how do we get that cinematic look? What frame rates should we use? And what the heck is the 180-degree shutter rule? Well, I'm gonna tell you guys today on Quick Tip Tuesday. Leave a like, subscribe, let's get into it. So the most important thing to realize when it comes to how you want your footage to look is the relationship between your shutter speed and your frame rate. There's multiple different frame rates you can shoot at, and there's multiple different shutter speeds you can shoot at. The lower the number, the f-stop or aperture, the more blur you're gonna introduce into your footage, which we tend to see as a more cinematic look. The higher or lower your shutter speed, the more or less motion blur you're gonna introduce into your footage. So what the heck is the 180-degree shutter rule? Well, a more advanced definition would be the relationship between frame rate and shutter speed, and a more simplified version of that would be your shutter speed should be double your frame rate. So for example, if you're shooting 24 frames per second, your shutter speed should be 1/50 to get that natural smooth motion blur. If you're shooting 60 frames per second, it should be 1/20th of a second, and if you're shooting 120, your shutter speed should be 1/240. And remember, a faster shutter speed is going to introduce less motion blur and also a darker image, while a slower shutter speed is going to introduce nice smooth motion blur and a brighter image. So if you follow all of these steps, your shutter speed, your frame rate, your iris, everything is in unison. You should be able to mimic motion the way that our human eye sees the world, which is pretty cool. There we go. That should haze up the room a little bit, make it look a little bit more atmospheric and cinematic. Back to the tips though. So concerning aperture, if you want that shallow depth of field for your shots, what you're gonna wanna do is start your shutter speed first. Use the 180-degree shutter rule, and then from there change your ISO, your aperture. A lot of beginner filmmakers, and I've done this in the past as well, we make the big mistake of going outside. It's super duper bright. So what do? We wanna shoot at f2.8 or f1.4 or whatever. So we go out there, we set our aperture at f1.4, and then we crank our shutter speed to like 4,000th of a second because we need to properly exposed for the image, and then the motion blur, it just looks really jittery and kind of clunky, and frame blending doesn't look good together, and it's just not a good look. So that's where something like an ND filter would come in handy, so you can turn and adjust the light sensitivity there if you're outdoors. So I want to do a little test of motion blur here. Right now I'm shooting at 24 frames per second. My settings are f1.4 800 ISO because I'm shooting in S-Log2, and my shutter speed is at 1/50th of a second. Now if I wave my hand like this in front of the camera, you guys can see it's going to be like a smooth motion blur. It's going to look pretty decent. And if I up my shutter speed now to something like, let's say 1/500th of a second, so now we're at f1.4 2000 ISO, and my shutter speed is at 1/500th of a second. And if I wave my hand in front of the camera now, you guys are going to see like there's less motion blur, but it just kind of looks a little wonky. It doesn't look as cinematic. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's Quick Tip Tuesday. If you did, make sure to leave a like, subscribe. It would mean a ton to me. I hope you guys enjoyed the short film that I made as well. I'll leave a link to that in the description, or I'll leave a little card. I'm pretty sure it's on this side. Yeah, I hope you guys have a great start to your week, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.